Chapter 4. Carpenter, Cook, Steward, etc. Carpenter. Working ship. Seaman's work. Helm. Duty aloft. Work at his trade. Station. Berth and mess. Standing watch. Sailmaker. Seaman's work. Work at trade. Duty aloft. Standing watch. Berth and mess. Station. Steward. Duty in passenger ships. Care of cabin table. Passengers. In other vessels. Master, mate. Aloft. About decks. Working ship. Cook. Berth. Standing watch. Care of galley and furniture. Working ship. Duty aloft. Carpenter. Almost every merchant vessel of a large class, or bound upon a long voyage, carries a carpenter. His duty is to work at his trade under the direction of the master, and to assist in all hands work according to his ability. He is stationed with the larboard or starboard watch, as he may be needed, though if there is no third mate, usually with the larboard. In working ship, if he is an able seaman, as well as carpenter, he will be put in some more important place, as looking after the main tack and boat, or working the forecastle with a mate, and if capable of leading his watch aloft, he would naturally take the bunt or an earing. He is not expected to handle the light sails, nor to go above the topsail yards, except upon the work of his trade. If he ships for an able seaman as well as carpenter, he must be capable of doing seaman's work upon the rigging and taking his turn at the wheel, if called upon, though he would not be required to do it except in bad weather, or in case the vessel should be short-handed. If he does not expressly ship for seaman as well as carpenter, no nautical skill can be required of him. But he must still, when all hands are called, or if ordered by the master, pull and haul about decks, and go aloft in the work usual on such occasions, as reefing and furling. But the inferior duties of the crew, as sweeping decks, slushing, tarring, etc., would not be put upon him, nor would he be required to do any strictly seaman's work, except taking a helm in case of necessity, or such work as all hands join in. The carpenter is not an officer, has no command, and cannot give an order even to the smallest boy. Yet he is a privileged person. He lives in the steerage with the steward, has charge of the ship's chest of tools, and in all things connected with his trade is under the sole direction of the master. The chief mate has no authority over him in his trade, unless it be in case of the master's absence or disability. In all things pertaining to the working of the vessel, however, and as far as he acts in the capacity of a seaman, he must obey the orders of the officers as implicitly as any of the crew would. Though, perhaps, an order from the second mate would come somewhat in the form of a request. Yet there is no doubt that he must obey the second mate in his proper place, as much as he would the master in his. Although he lives in the steerage, he gets his food from the galley, from the same mess with the men in the forecastle, having no better or different fare in any respect, and he has no right on the quarter-deck, but must take his place on the forecastle with the common seamen. In many vessels, during fine weather, upon long voyages, the carpenter stands no watch, but sleeps in at night, is called at daylight, and works all day at his trade. But in this case, whenever all hands are called, he must come up with the rest. In bad weather, when he cannot well work at his trade, or if the vessel becomes short-handed, he is put in a watch, and does duty on deck, turning in and out with the rest. In many vessels, especially those bound on short voyages, the carpenter stands his watch, and, while on deck, works at his trade in the daytime, if the weather will permit, and at night, or in bad weather, does watch duty according to his ability. Sailmaker. Some ships of the largest class carry a sailmaker, though usually the older seamen are sufficiently skilled in the trade to make and mend sails, and the master or chief mate should know how to cut them out. As to the sailmaker's duty on board, the same remarks will apply to him that were made upon the carpenter. If he ships for seaman as well as sailmaker, he must do an able seaman's duty, if called upon. And if he does not so ship, he will still be required to assist in all hands work, such as working ship, taking in and making sail, etc., according to his ability. And in bad weather, or a case of necessity, he may be put with a watch, and required to do ship's duty with the rest. In all hands work, he is mustered with either watch, according to circumstances, and the station allotted to him will depend upon his qualities as a seaman. And, as with the carpenter, if he is a good seaman, he would naturally have some more important post assigned to him. He is not expected to handle the light sails, nor to go above the topsail yards. Nor would the inferior duties of the crew, such as tarring, slushing, and sweeping decks, be put upon him. In bad weather, or in case of necessity, he may be mustered in a watch, and must do duty as one of the crew, according to his ability. Sometimes he stands no watch, and works at his trade all day, and at others he stands his watch, and when on deck in the daytime and during good weather, works at his trade, and at night, or in bad weather, does duty with the watch. He usually lives in the steerage with the carpenter, and always takes his food from the galley. He has no command, and when on deck belongs on the forecastle with the rest of the crew. In the work of his trade he is under the sole direction of the master, or of the chief mate in the master's absence, but in ship's work he is as strictly under the command of the mates as a common seaman is. Steward. The duties of the steward are very different in packet ships, carrying a large number of passengers, from those which are required of him in other vessels. In the New York liners, for instance, he has waiters or under-stewards who do most of the labor, he himself having the general superintendence of the department. It is his duty to see that the cabin and staterooms are kept in order, to see to the laying and clearing of the tables, to take care of the dishes and other furniture belonging to them, to provide the meals under the master's direction, preparing the nicer dishes himself, to keep the general charge of the pantry and stores for the cabin, to look after the cook in his department, and lastly, which is as important a part of his duty as any other, to attend to the comfort and convenience of the passengers. These duties, where there are many passengers, require all his time and attention, and he is not called upon for any ship's duty. In vessels which are not passenger ships, he does the work which falls to the understewards of the large packets, cleans the cabin and staterooms, sets, tends, and clears away the table, provides everything for the cook, and has charge of the pantry, where all the table furniture and the small stores are kept. He is also the body servant of the master. His relation to the chief mate is somewhat doubtful, but the general understanding is that, although he waits upon him when at table, and must obey him in all matters relating to the ship's work, yet he is not in any respect his servant. If the mate wishes any personal service done, he would ask it, or make some compensation. In these vessels, the steward must come on deck whenever all hands are called, and in working ship pulls and hauls about decks with the men. The main sheet is called the steward's rope, and this he lets go and hauls aft in tacking and wearing. In reefing and furling he is expected to go upon the lower and topsail yards, and especially the mizzen topsail yard of a ship. No seamanship is expected of him, and he stands no watch, sleeping in at night and turning out at daylight. Yet he must do ship's duty according to his ability when all hands are called for a working ship, or for taking in or making sail. In these things he must obey the mates in the same way that a common seaman would, and is punishable for disobedience. The amount of ship's duty required of him depends, as I have said, upon the number of passengers. Cook. The cook almost always lives in the forecastle, though sometimes in the steerage with the steward. He stands no watch, sleeping in at night, and working at his business throughout the day. He spends his time mostly in the cookhouse, which is called the galley, where he cooks both for the cabin and forecastle. This, with keeping the galley, boilers, pans, kids, etc., clean and in order, occupies him during the day. He is called with all hands, and in tacking and wearing, works the foresheet. He is also expected to pull and haul about decks, in all hands work, and is occasionally called from his galley to give a pull at a tackle or halyards. No seamanship can be required of him, but he is usually expected to go upon a lower or topsail yard in reefing or furling, and to assist according to his ability in working ship. In regular passenger ships, however, as he is more exclusively employed in cooking, he is not required to do any duty about decks, except in a case of necessity or of common danger. In some other vessels, too, if strongly manned, neither the cook nor steward is sent upon the yards. yet it can, without doubt, be required of them, by the custom and understanding of the service, to go upon a lower or topsail yard to reef or furl. If there are on board armorers, coopers, or persons following any other trades, they take the same place and follow the same rules as to duty that govern the carpenter and sailmaker. In the merchant service, when all hands are called, it literally calls every one on board but the passengers, excepting, as I have said, in the case of the cook and steward of strictly passenger ships. Those persons of whom any duty can be required who do not stand a watch, but sleep in at night and work during the day, are called idlers. Besides turning out with all hands, the idlers are sometimes called up at night to help the watch on deck in any heavy or difficult duty, when it is not desirable to call the other watch, who may have had severe service. This is allowable if practiced only in cases of necessity, and not carried to an extreme.